Hello, guys. This is Brian Perales, your host for Lifting the Veil. Our main objective to this podcast is to challenge you guys to step into the rabbit hole, to open your consciousness to think deeper, to change your philosophy for what you thought life's purpose was, just by listening to ordinary people with an extraordinary story. You see, we all have a message to tell the world, and by having this platform, we have an opportunity collectively in unlocking the mysteries of the rabbit hole. Through this podcast channel, we will be interviewing people who speak with no boundaries, from people who had near-death experiences, spiritual, or some deep revelation from their soul journey. Thanks for joining us, and be prepared to transform your mind. Welcome to our podcast, Lifting the Veil. In a couple of seconds, I'm about to transition to a couple of audio clips of just me and two of my friends. We were actually brainstorming of the making of this podcast. So some interesting concepts that I wanted you guys to hear. So I'll turn it over.
Because this is the journey. The journey hole is actually in the rabbit hole, but you eventually get clarity even in the infinite space. So we have to structure it somewhere where it's like, kind of like what you said, you want them to get to the point where they don't know what to believe anymore, but then also give them direction on like, hey, like if you start going in this direction, you will get clarity and it will manifest in your own life. Because that's really the ultimate goal, like the most profound poetry usually involves paradoxes, right? So it's like you want them to take them into the black hole, but in doing that, find clarity, right? So that's kind of the whole thing. That's the whole theme of it.
Yeah.
Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, another thing too is just kind of like just talking to both you guys. A lot of times I would have just conversation with you guys where I may say something, and then it would resonate with you because you had an experience or you heard someone else say that, or like, oh, you're the third person that said that, Brian. So there's something there. You know what I mean? And
right.
I think with this Lifting the Veil podcast, what it's going to do, it's going to like screw people's heads up because they're like, okay, wait a minute. I never told anybody about what happened personally when I took that mushroom, when I took that LSD. But after listening to this, it shows that it is real. There is an astral body. This the Veil podcast, it's also going to like remind people where they came from, or just kind of entertain that,
For sure, man. And the whole process, actually, that is the process. The process is confusion to clarity. So actually kind of what you said is clear, because in hearing people's stories, people may get confused, but eventually they'll get clarity. That's like literally the process. You can't go through it any other way. Like your old belief systems have to be dismantled before a new one takes its place, so on and so forth until infinity.
Just to kind of give an example, like it's good to hear other people's perspective. Like one guy, he took LSD and he says, no, there is no God, I am God. And another person said, no, it's not that you are God, but you become a subpart of God, where you have an encounter with God and you feel like you are God, but you're just like a sub, like a branch of God. And so
right.
some people's labels and perspectives are so much close, but it's different. It's just like just like when people talked about when they died in China and they said they saw Buddha. Well, how do you know that was Buddha? What if that was Jesus? Or how do you know that was Jesus? Or what if that's just you wanting to say that's what it is to validate your faith because you're feared to step out of your Christian bubble? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so many things that I've heard. Like I've talked to just different people. There's something about them, about their experience, which is real. You know what I mean? So basically, kind of like what I've experienced, and this. Let me tell you something, okay? This is the best way I can explain it. Based off of just talking to different people and studying over 5,000 different experiences, I think it's like cable TV. Everyone talked about, oh man, when I died, I actually, was in the frequency of channel 10 and channel 10. And you know what I saw in channel 10? I saw these reptilians, I saw these Dracos, and then one person said, well, when I died or I took my LSD, I actually stepped into the dimension of channel 32, which is a frequency of heaven. So everyone, this is kind of like my perspective of seeing a bird's eye view. Everyone's experience has somewhat of similarity, but they're so different because they're landing in a different frequency in some astral world, which is through this whole process of this interview of lifting the veil, we might be able to accomplish to create a chart of all the different channels of this cable TV rabbit hole.
Oh man. Well, you know, you actually described life on Earth perfectly, right? It's like we're all here on Earth, like everyone is in quarantine, right? On the planet Earth, but everyone is having a vastly different experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But some people who come to certain understandings, they start having some similarities. You know, that's why I was telling you about like, yo, I'm noticing a lot of people are waking up to higher truth. Like I'm just noticing it, right? So I'm conversing with these people and noticing a lot of similarities in our stories. But someone who hasn't woken up at all, our stories are so vastly different, right? Even though we live closer together, right? It's like we're living in the same house, but I have something more similar with someone across town.
Yeah. The one of the other things you got to realize too about everything that's going on right now is that at the end of the day, this is a planet, right? And we're all creatures of this planet, just like any bird, any bee, any insect. Everything is connected somehow to whatever they call the magnetic field or whatever that gives creatures here a rhythm of a pulse or whatever that makes them move to a certain beat. You know, reason why ants build colonies, bees build hives, we do what we do, whatever. And the thing about us is that we've learned to understand how by altering that environment, we can alter behavior and patterns. And just like you domesticate a dog, you can domesticate a human. And right now, one of the things I was saying early on, like in January, because I was telling Brian I was following this since December, since that doctor, they started disappearing, those doctors over there. And and I'm a person that just follows world history in general. I'm a big history buff, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
And so one of the things that I was telling Brian is that through history, those are factual events that have been recorded in time for a reason. And when you start studying different, like you guys are just talking about different frequencies, you could, if you expand on that to different time frames and different time periods, the one common denominator is that the human was there. You know what I mean? The only thing that changed was time. And to see patterns of destruction by human beings in a similar way through different time periods and just repeating, because the people in charge or certain elements of it are structured a certain way. Just like imagine like the world is like an aquarium. And when you alter a little element inside of that aquarium, you can make that aquarium create fungus and all kind of shit. And if you don't, or you take care of it, you can make it behave a certain way. So we've gotten to the point where technology has enabled us to do all that shit. You know what I mean? And there's people that are just abusing it. I think, you know, in general, there's a lot of manipulation and shit going on, and it's just, you know, now technology can be weaponized or it can be used to push humanity forward. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's actually one of the veils. That's one of the 9 veils. So lifting the veil, man. Lift all the veils.